Hey, Georgia, are you waking up excited about?
Oh my gosh, a few things. Can I say three things or should I say one?
Please lay it all on me. If you're excited about multiple things, this is going to be three times as good.
Okay, so my yoga practice, I go to yoga almost every morning, and I have this Ashtanga yoga practice that I go before work, which is a renewed passion of mine. And then actually spending time with my team. I go to work in the office, and my team, especially at this particular version of the team, is amazing and it's very energizing. And maybe we'll unpack this third answer is actually just waking up feeling well because I've had a bit of like a journey through health issues before, and I think that I'm still very very much appreciating the waking up and just feeling good.
It's beautiful. And that perspective is like it unlocks the other perspective of just being able to be present with your team, to be able to practice yoga, to like do all that stuff. It's like a hard-earned gratitude and excitement.
Yeah. I'm not going to make it too long, but in 2020, I got sick with COVID, like many people in the planet, as we've been going through a pandemic. Then I started to develop what right now we know as long COVID symptoms, and I've started to actually get worse. And at every reinfection, I've got worse to the point that my functionality got very limited. I had so many different symptoms and body systems that were not working okay, seeing so many doctors and tried all the therapies. And unfortunately, like to the point that for a few months, I was housebound and even bedbound at times. And I had to stop working in 2023, which has been really hard. Then I started my recovery in 2024. We can talk all about it. But I feel that right now, just the fact of waking up and not having necessarily to worry about what my body will do to me that day or whether I could take those many steps or the exertion will destroy me. It's just such something that even if I've been feeling well, even though, my recovery has been ups and downs, like all recoveries are never linear,
Sure.
but I've been feeling well for quite a while, like definitely more than a few months. And even I say that my recovery actually started early in 2024, but I still have that sense of appreciation that I hope it actually will never go away because it's a very different way of seeing life than I had before I got sick.
Yeah, yeah. So you're touching on a number of things. One, there's like your physical symptoms, but then there's almost this like sort of secondary layer that I've experienced through my own hard, which is like the anxiety of the primary thing. Even if like you're like physically recovering in
Yeah.
2024 onwards, there's this like lack of like trust that you're waiting for it, you're bracing for it to return.
I think we're very related too, as in I've learned a lot even about the nervous system and how if we feel that we are in a constant state of threat, which sometimes when our body are not responding to us, and even the doctors tell you that they don't have an answer, and so there's this uncertainty, and then really you're constantly in a way like body checking, body scanning. Am I better? Is it worse? What's happening? Even when you're starting to feel better, I think we can call it trauma really. And then it's true, like you're for a long time, and to a certain extent, I have a component to that too, that it's a little ingrained into some particular triggers, which are body sensations or environment that I associated with being sicker in a way, that still kind of triggers me. But 100%, I think when you experience something so major and it's hard to decouple the actual things that are happening to your body and your percentage of functionality or whatever you can do to the actual fear that these things is never going to go away. It's going to come back. That's going to rule my life. And unfortunately, I think it's a bit of a reinforcing cycle if we believe that the nervous system has implications on what's happening in our bodies.
Yeah, people will be, oh, it's all in your head or like whatever. It's like, well, your head is attached to your body.
Yeah.
these things these things inform and influence one another, like if
Yeah.
like as you've come to know and become an expert in, it's like, yeah, when you stub your toe, there's a bunch of chemical processes that happen that create this like mind body connection, and like
We
so
could
it's
talk about it for a whole episode if you want to, because my own recovery was a lot about brain retraining, nervous system regulation, trauma work, and all of that. Which,
yeah.
again, if you told me in the middle of my illness, I would probably wanted to punch you in the face. And I thought, what are you talking about? Like, that cannot cure me. But I think it's been actually a ton of work. And it's not just about, oh, positive mindset or positive thinking. It's really not what it is, but it's been really a fundamental part of what I've learned. And I think that also is about the slightly different outlook that I have on life and on the positive things that are happening in a given day that I've needed to start paying attention to just really get out of the negative cycle of, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I'm sick. I'm unlucky. Why me? All of that stuff.
Do you have like a distinct moment when you feel like you kind of like crossed a plane of like, I'm rather than being sort of like backward facing
Yeah.
or negative leaning into this kind of like
Yeah.
turning corner?
Yeah, I do. It's the beginning of 2024, and it is when I actually started with a real commitment doing a brain retraining program. And I think at that point I had exhausted so many roads into medical treatments, clinical trials, spent tens of thousands of dollars despite having good health insurance. And at some point, I had the opportunity to publish some of my story in the New York Times in the form of a visual op-ed that used rushed colors to visualize all the data. And we haven't even talked about it, but I'm a data nerd. I do data stuff in my life. That we visualize all the data that I collected through my illness, and I did that to just really shine a light on what it means to live with a chronic condition on a daily basis versus, the articles that are usually out there. When I think if you read a list of symptoms, you can say, well, I'm fatigued too. I have headaches too.
Yeah.
But if you really see the litany of things playing out on like a visual page every single day, there's a bit of more of awareness. But long story short, after that article got published, because of the visibility of the New York Times, I got thousands of messages, and some that just said, thank you for sharing something of that kind. Now I have like something that I can share to my own family to
Yes.
share what I've been
Yeah.
going through on a daily basis. But then, and I have to thank a woman that I was connected to on Instagram. We never met each other, but we followed each other on Instagram. She's an author, that she wrote me and she said, I've had long COVID too. I've had a horrible illness too. And I don't know if you're open to talking to me, but there's something that really helped me. And as much as many people have shared with me, oh, try that
Yeah.
acupuncture treatment.
Do this, do
Thank
this, do this. Have you tried
that,
this?
because I knew her, because I knew that she was not trying to sell me anything, because Brad, it came at the right moment in time. Again, if it came a year before, I wouldn't have been ready, but
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to her. And so I talked to her and she shared her story and she just convinced me to try. And so I really started to work on the connection that my symptoms had to me, to meanings and what it meant, and the cure that I really desperately needed in my own mind and in my own story. Otherwise, I couldn't really start leaving or being happy and really understanding the role of the limbic system and the threat response of the vagus nerve and all of this that really is based on science. And then I started to work on interrupting the patterns and visualizing health. Like I've done so many of these visualizations where I just close my eyes and visualize myself doing all the things that I couldn't do in great details. But I think that that was the turning point. It doesn't mean that that is when I actually started to regain functionality altogether. Again, it's been very, very slow. And I've actually just recently, I think it was probably a month and a half ago, started to say out loud, I think I'm fully recovered. And also, like, does it mean that I never have symptoms or days where I feel bad? No, but it means that I have the confidence that I'm on the right path, and maybe I'll have some setbacks, but I don't think that I mean, knock on wood, obviously, but I think that I'm out of that constant loop of sort. And if you want to share anything about anything you've experienced that is related, I'd love to hear it too.
Well, I mean, like one, there's so much to it, and you sort of alluded to it earlier, where it's like, it's not like it's like hippy dippy shit of like the power of positive thinking. What you're describing is real intellectual work and
Yeah.
real labor to retrain your brain and to have these different narratives and to interrupt hardwired systems. Like that's like, it's a lot of work to do. And I think it's so fascinating just because I know you to be this storyteller and designer and narrative person in using so it's like the fact that like it obviously sucks that it happened, but I will say that the fact that it happened to such like a brilliant mind who's able to articulate things in ways that other people cannot, as already done by way of that New York Times article, has already had like a massive impact. But I also like I think it's fascinating to just like hear you put those skills that you've employed for whenever I first met you to use
Yeah.
on this thing, and I think that there's a lot there. The only other thing that I'll sort of say, so recently over the summer, my wife had hand, foot, mouth disease, and she was bedridden for weeks, and it was awful. It was so incredibly bad. Like usually it's like people get it, but she just got annihilated by it. When you're literally bedridden and you're in a certain mental state, the just the immense mental effort it takes to say to envision your muscles moving and to like envision yourself not in that state is so incredibly like awe-inspiring. So just I just like wanted to like this isn't just some magical thinking or like oh you know have you tried just
Yeah.
being happy because like that people with kind of more chronic mental illnesses like depression or anxiety like those are people that are also used to hearing like have you considered thinking different. It's like,
Yeah.
they're very insulting. So seemingly simple or deceptively simple, but it's like a lot of work and a lot of nuance here.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I'm so sorry to hear about Melissa. I hope she's doing
Yeah,
fine now.
she's better. She's better now, but still, like the
It's
mental scars
fine.
from it all. Yeah, yeah.
And it's true, it's nuanced. And I think that for a lot of people that have not experienced anything chronic or anything scary health-wise might even be hard to depict and understand and really understand. But what is really the role of the brain and the nervous system if we want to explain it scientifically? And I think obviously I'm not going to do a great job because I'm not a scientist, I'm a designer myself. But really in my understanding is that then the more that you perceive your body being under threat and the more that you are constantly faced with feelings of uncertainty and actual feelings of pain and real body discomfort, the more that if it keeps going and it becomes somehow chronic, or if you don't have a certain answer that puts your mind at peace that says, okay, this might suck for a little bit, or, this might not be great for a little bit. Doctors have me, I'm going to do this therapy and it's all going to be fine. Well, that puts your nervous system in a constant state of fight or flight, like the actual sympathetic activation that really, if it is sustained over a period of time, makes a lot of the rest of the parts of the body go haywire because simply there's just so much energy and focus on this like threat, constant reinforced feedback. And this is where the other parts of the system, from metabolism to even cardiovascular stuff, might really get wrong. And, there's so much that, because of the nervous system and the vagus nerve innervating literally every part of our, organs, that is incredibly connected. And I think that we are at a bit of a paradigm shift in medicine and science when it comes to the mind-body connection, even though I think that, again, it's hard because even terms like mind-body and the mind-body community means very well because I've been following a lot of it, but it doesn't feel scientific enough. It still touches upon what you were saying, that it's about, well, does it mean that if you're just thinking happily, you can cure yourself? It's way more nuanced and complicated. And you use the good right word that is like rewiring these like pathways that have been, especially if you're chronic something illness went on for months and months and months, like literally you're building these pathways that associate whatever body sensations or fear with an actual real signal of danger. And so you really have to undo them, interrupt them when the thought come in, and constantly go and build good ones. And it's really, really hard work. And I think in the beginning, especially again, my chronic illness went on for 4 years and it got worse and worse and worse. Especially after 4 years, like really, you have to do it probably 24/7. That was the beginning of my recovery. It's a constant 24/7 interrupting your mind. Refocus on the present, refocus on something positive, do your exercises. Like it's almost like a brain injury that you need to heal from.
Yeah, I mean, like wow, and here you are, and here you are on the other side of it, like and like like you're saying, it's like only recently feeling comfortable to say like I'm recovered. How does that feel?
I mean, it feels incredible, honestly. And at many points in my journey, I didn't even fully believe, even during my recovery. Sometimes I couldn't fully buy it in that I'll be able to do life again. At the same time, as much as I'm saying I feel that I'm recovered, I think I'm dealing with a bit of like a reintegration of life, right? Like understanding how do I want my life to be intentional right now? Like I almost feel like I'm in a post-recovery phase that it's trying to take the good things that I've learned from my illness and the connection and attunement that I have right now with my own body triggers around me and kind of use it in the right way. Because I feel that what's been happening to me, it's also that I've become really hyper aware of the states of my nervous system when like people trigger me, when something triggers me. And it almost feels like it's a superpower that can be great for some things, for regulations, but some other times you also need to learn how to use it in your daily life without needing to step away from things too often because it feels wrong. So it's a very personal thing that I am still even learning how to describe. But I feel that when there's such a fundamental shift in how you live your life, it just takes time for it to fully develop, right, in all the areas.
In certain respects, it's like you're an X-Men character that just got your powers and you're figuring out like this entirely different type of intelligence now that you're like figuring out how to.
You've learned to jump like a superheroes, but sometimes you jump too high and you're like, what's going on? I don't know how to get back. It was funny. I never thought about it that way.
That like reintegration process, I'm like really, really curious about this. So it's like you are a creative professional.
Yeah.
Even leading up to all of that, that was, you know, your lifeblood, and that was your world. And then being sort of ripped away from that, and like now you use that word like reintegration. So you're like reconnecting with and reintegrating into like the creative community. Like how has that been? Like how was it?
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Well, in that way, my situation is particular because I stopped working for a few months fully.
Yeah.
But I kept my job for the majority even of my illness and through my recovery because I'm a partner at a big design firm, and I have partners that each and every one of us have our own clients and our own teams. And my team has been just so incredible when I was sick to just like step in and help me still have a role that could be the one of supervising and doing some of the creative things that I could still do. But at the same time, especially, my team at the time were able to handle a lot of the burden themselves of the day-by-day conversations with clients and all that needs to happen. And then as I've started to recover and come back, and in the beginning, maybe doing it a little bit more remotely, now I come to my office every day. We're in 4 days a week, and I really love it. I love working with my team. I think that there have been two phases for me. One that was the one where I knew that I was recovering, but still a lot of the activity that a normal person does were too much. And so I could come to work, but I couldn't hang out after work. Yeah. I could do meetings of a certain kind, but I couldn't travel. Like travel was just too much. And in the illness that I've been going through, there's that thing that is called post-exertional malaise. That is another name that I don't think makes justice to it, but it is that when you do too much for your own tolerance, which again can be related to the nervous system very much, then your system's like, nope, this is too much. I'm going to make you crash for like 3 weeks. And so I still in my recovery needed to pay attention to things. And so, but at the same time, then there'll be a question to ask my team. But I hope that what I really wanted to do from the beginning of me coming back is making them feel that I was more okay than I actually was, like giving them a sort of feeling secure that I can handle these. And I feel that I've at times probably they could feel that I was still not feeling great and wanted to do a little too much for what I could. But I think, that was phase number one. And then as I really started to even master more of the language of my body, that's what I'm calling it, because my body, my nervous system was really talking to me. And as I started to feel the one on the driver's seat versus the other way around, I think that as sort of like a second level of recovery and integration with my creative practice and my team started. But I think that lately, Brad, I don't think that I've ever felt so present with my job like I was before. Like, I think obviously we were even chatting offline before recording that, you and I both have been back to back in meetings and multitasking in meetings because there's demands on us. But but I know that I am truly way more present than before. And I still have to put my finger really on, what happened. I mean, sure, it just happened that probably I've like healed my own patterns of even before I've gotten sick onto how I live my life. But I think it's been pretty wonderful. Now I still, and I think this is just for like, again, a sort of reintegration. I still feel like if I have to say yes to a trip to Japan and then I come back and then I go to Europe and then I
Yeah,
come
yeah.
back and then I red eye to the West Coast, I think this is going to wear me out a little bit more than probably the normal person. But I also feel like we might be aging.
I don't think any of that's normal though. Like it's like COVID put the brakes on like my
Yeah.
travel in a big way and is like, oh, that wasn't healthy. Like that's like
Yeah, right.
COVID or not, like that just wasn't like a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff is like pretty like orders of magnitude out of the way that our bodies have evolved.
Yeah.
It's
You're right. This is also a
limit.
good reality check.
Yeah.
It's a reality check. It's not just my lingering stuff
Yeah.
from these years. It's also like you and I are not as young as when we met.
That's right. That's right. It's just it's like there's just that old thing
Yeah.
called just growth, but also shifting priorities and stuff. But I think that
Yeah.
I could what you said about like kind of first kind of coming back, and like there's this real like desire to sort of go back up, make up for lost time, feel like I'm kind of like repaying the debt that like other people are like supporting me through this hardship. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, I'm back. I'm gonna like, this is my thank you note to you, is like me like really kind of coming back in and kicking ass, and then ultimately getting really frustrated when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not quite there.
It's really exactly how it's been. And yeah, I think everybody that has been through something similar could appreciate that the reintegration, really, it's not as easy as in, oh, I left these back exactly like these, I don't know, 6 months ago, 3 years ago, and I can start right if it was yesterday. It's nuance, and I think hopefully you're also right, like the setting different priorities and understand what is that was really necessary for your business, or actually what is that drained you more than it actually energized or excited. It's something that both as we get more experience and we get older as creative or designers or anything, but also as we understand the nuances of how we live life with our bodies and minds, it just comes to focus a little more.
I think that that's great. There's something really fascinating about the alchemy of hard leading to a sense of presence, which you've used, but in gratitude, which you've used, and kind of like a reinvigoration. And I think that that's not a given, because like I think a lot of people go through hard things, and you end up with resentment, you end up with all sorts of stuff, or like lingering gross stuff that can really take it forward. So there's something really interesting.
I think I just also, maybe we focus a lot on the recovery part. I just also want to make clear that in the beginning and for the majority of my illness, I didn't have that mentality that we're talking about.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
In my own darkness and being completely over encompassed by what was going on with me. Like I almost couldn't see anything else. And I was doing all my job and my work and anything else in a real survival state. It was just to survive. There was nothing that gave me joy. I admit that I had a bit of a victim mentality, and I kept looking at people around me that got COVID 4 times and they were just fine. And why do I need to be the one that every time that I get COVID, and even then I spent an entire year isolated and with a mask and all of these, and I still got COVID because of something. So, and then I got worse, and there was a lot of like, why me? And I couldn't even see a higher teaching, a higher experience coming out of that. And I still think, if I could have a magic wand and go back 5 years and decide, would I have done it? Yes, no, it's tricky, because I think there was a part of this whole experience where I was sure that even if I get fully recovered, I'm never going to be one of these people that said, oh, but if I went back, I'll redo it all again because I've learned so much. I would go through it no matter what. I mean, I think I don't know where I stand. I think that I've really, really learned a lot. Obviously, I lost 5 years. Not, it's not true. I didn't lose 5 years of my life, but I spent a lot of these years suffering. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on whether.
I share that. I like where I've kind of landed on it is it's like if I had a magic wand to go back to before I had to like flee my home and stuff, I am so incredibly grateful for those lessons. I think that there's like that just kind of, yeah, it's the acceptance of it, that there were those things, there was that suffering. And that's, I guess, one of just the lessons of life is that it's like sometimes it really does mean having to endure that suffering in order to get those lessons. And we can articulate it like we're doing now to other people that might not have, but it's like it really is the experiential part of it that's like so like really interesting, fascinating stuff about, and not just about like sort of trauma, but like the other thing kind of holds true too. And like we were talking about like rewiring our brain and like neural canyons and like a lot of stuff around like sort of psychedelics therapy and stuff is really fascinating in this respect too, because it's like people going through psychedelic experiences and things like that are like it's all love. Love is the answer, and people are like
What?
blink twice, like and it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
you don't get it. Like, and there's this something to this, like the sort of experiential aspect of a lot of these things that it's like our language, and this is like you're just the person to talk to about this because you're able to articulate things in different language than speech and just written words. You can do those things, but those are insufficient to sort of certain types of experience and certain types of like stories. And that's why I think like the visual arts and music and like all of these like expressive arts of any flavor are really fascinating because it's like there's certain things that you cannot just verbalize a sad country song. You have to feel like that's the only way that sadness can be articulated, right?
I agree. And I think, or I would actually add that I feel that if you share an experience or you are in a similar point in a journey, like in a strange way, you and I are, even if different things happen to us and we haven't seen each other in like decades or something, but I feel that we almost share a baseline of this language. And so with words, it's a little easier to feel that we're understanding each other. But I think that the experiences are profoundly different between the person deciding to tell the story and the person that receiving the story. Sometimes words are too much of a representation of the teller's moment and world, and they're just so detached from the receivers that there's like clear like a communication clash. But I use data and visuals, and data is also something that we can unpack on what I even think that it is to tell visual stories. And I think that there's something interesting to these data visualizations that are seen as these artistic pieces that, especially the ones that visualize things that are happening over and over time. There's a certain level of abstraction that you need to have to be able to tell a story with data. And so my own symptoms, for example, became every one like a color's brushstroke. And then the intensity of them indicated the intensity of my symptoms. And you could clearly kind of like see them over time. But because there were no words, I almost feel that you enter into my experience better by just visualizing the passage of time and understanding if you see like 3 years that are full of these brushstrokes, and there rarely is a day that is visualized that doesn't have anything, which means like there rarely was a day when I was feeling okay. That I think is something that sometimes has more power than words, like music has, because music then really gets to our own intimate feeling, and it, the whole composition of the melodies can totally evoke emotions and sentiments. And so it's beautiful that we can speak all these languages.
It really is, and it's this different dimension, and it's something that's come up like enough times where I kind of do need to put pen to paper on it. But like I liken speech and the written word to like the visible light spectrum, but it's like there's all of the rest of the electromagnetic kind of spectrum that exists. It's like a physical reality, but it's like we're only able to sort of see this very, very narrow slice of it. And that's why, like, for me, like the arts help give that like infrared or X-ray kind of vision to a lot of that stuff. But I love like Yeah, like the data as storytelling and this ability to put something into a container or tell a story in this very unique way really does puncture through. And because certainly like your New York Times piece wasn't the only story about long COVID.
Yeah.
Other people were sharing these things, but it's like I think that there's really something fascinating to, and I mean like this is like your professional work and stuff as well, is like you're like, here's this organization that has this mission and embodies these values and is trying to go somewhere, and there's like to articulate that in the form of like a brand or like, you know, tell a story with it with their data and stuff like that. I think is like it's like a really fascinating feel because it's like I kind of have it as well, but not practicing at your sort of like professional level, but at the same time, like I didn't really appreciate it until more recently that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like these different modalities of storytelling are actually really, really necessary, and branding and things like that are not just cute or just for let's make the Nike box look cool, but it like it really is like that everything feeds into the bigger narrative. There's real power and opportunity in that to kind of carry important stories forward.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so passionate about it. And I think I used to say I'm a data visualization designer. And then I think I shifted saying I'm a designer whose favorite material is data. And then I think right now, as much as I really don't like the word storytelling, but I think that ultimately what I am doing is I craft and tell stories in a visual way. And sometimes they have data in it, sometimes it's a brand. But I think that ultimately a brand is an embodiment of a story, a mission, a
Sure.
vision, like a tale that you're trying to tell to the group of people that you hope will resonate, a group of people that through this visual story might want to decide to belong and to feel that they're part of it. And then obviously, you know, there are good brands and big brand and bad brands. There are brands that do something horrible for the environment and brands that are amazing, like all
Yeah.
of it. And then obviously, you know, there's the spectrum in between. So I don't necessarily think that, you know, necessarily like all brand is amazing. Like there's nuances to
Yeah.
all of these. I have a easier time telling stories visually almost than I think with words. Or like sometimes I even think that, or let me put it differently. I know that in my creative practice, I have to sketch an idea out before I even realize that I had an idea in the first place. Like I think with my pen and a piece of paper. I always carry with me a stack of like letter size paper and a pen wherever I go, to the point that my purses always need to at least be like a tote bag because there's no way that I'm going anywhere out. And it became almost like a bit of a limiting factor. I mean, I'm kidding. I could survive one evening with a small purse, but rarely.
It's amazing. It's amazing, but it's part of like your vocabulary, and like once you like learn those tendencies or like that, you have those tendencies and like lean into them, and obviously like good things kind of come from that to be able to sort of tell it. There's also something I think really fascinating about that intersection of this sort of like visual storytelling and the our biological selves and these other sort of like abstract kind of concepts. Like I remember reading an article about the creation of the COVID, you know, that was
Yeah.
designed. Yeah, it was like it's like we need like the little spiky ball. It's like that's not just like a microscope kind
Sure.
of thing. It's like that. No, this is like a design thing that is able to sort of convey and
Yeah.
give a visual to this like very interesting thing. But then you also have you've got data over time, and you're talking
Mhm.
about like nervous systems and like, you know, motion, and you're talking about things like fading from one thing to another, and we go from hot to cold, or we go from to asleep. And there's like there's a lot of these like really experiential things that are it's like the visual arts and visual language seems particularly well suited to sort of describe these otherwise very abstract concepts.
Yeah, and I think that this is to me, it's, I mean, there's a more artistic side of it, but fundamentally, it's also like information design in a
Yeah.
way that it's like design in the way that people understand information. And to me, the most fascinating projects are the ones that then create, I mean, there's very few in the world, but start to create like a common language that then is used all the time. For example, a subway map. It's an abstraction of a map that has like the focal points in the stations and connects the stations in a way that is not geographical, but like interesting for the path that it does. So I think that kind of a device, it's fascinating. Or say music notation, something that comes from an experience of like playing and listening to music, something that before music notation was even invented, like didn't exist. People would just play and make sounds and remember the sounds and kind of play them. But the translation of that into a symbology that then people could read and replicate the same thing, it's fascinating. So I think that the creation of those languages are, to me, the absolutely most fascinating projects ever. I'm thinking myself, I did this visualization for the New York Times about this op-ed about my illness, and they got published right before I actually started my recovery. Like I said, then their reactions prompted me to talk to this woman that, helped me out with figuring out the problems. But I think, and it's not, usually I tend to rush into things, and this is not something I'm going to rush, but at some point I want to create a visual something about the story of my own healing and touching upon all of the things that you've said, which are phases of recoveries, which are mindset of sort, which are even, the nervous system and the role of the past that you've had in filling your bucket with trauma, stress, other environmental factors. Like, I think there's like a visualization there that at some point when it will feel right, I'll start to work on.
We should talk, because I think that's like we're kind of picking at that a little bit as well, which is just like, it's like how can you have it with like the Apple Watch and like sort of other things, and like I think like a lot of like kind of fitness trackers and things like that, like kind of get a little bit kind of close.
And I think sometimes the whole tracking thing, like I have to abandon my old tracking in my recovery because there's something that is like passive tracking, which is what, whatever body sensors tell you about your own sleep, about how you should be feeling, because your recovery score today was lower than yesterday. But if you feel okay, that's a whole other thing. And actually instead things that you actively observe and notice yourself. And I think the reconciliation between these, actually, I've decided to observe these, versus at this point, I have this thing that gives me all this metric and I'm getting hooked up. I think it's a fundamental distinction that needs to be made. I needed to at some point stop tracking during my illness when I started recovering, because literally I was waking up and feeling, maybe not terrible. And then I'd look at my scores, and my heart rate variability that should be really high was really low, and my sleep score was bad, and apparently whatever else was going on with my heart
and that's
rate.
A feedback loop, right? And that's a feedback loop. Yep. I love that. There's something like really fascinating. I love that it's just like there's a deliberateness to being present, and there's almost like a trust that needs to happen to like just kind of like trust your instincts, or like knowing that it's like, here's where I need to be headed directionally. Is all of this stuff like helping in that journey, or is it maybe kind of holding me back, which is fascinating. There's something you touched on that I'd really love to get at. I think one of the most important things we all have, and dare I say like responsibilities we all have, but like my entire adult life has been all of the opportunities I had, the ability to meet you has to do with like our willingness to sort of get up, on a stage, or like, write things or share things or whatever. As you were saying it, it's like this article required an enormous amount of vulnerability, an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of like, I'm not feeling good yet. So it's like, so you did that, and that act of sharing like kind of helped facilitate what sounds like a pretty durable recovery. And like, I just like want to acknowledge that. That's amazing. But like, how do you like the role of kind of like just sharing things?
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting question, because I can tell you, and I in a very honest way, what it is for me. I don't know that it's necessarily the best way of thinking about it, but through the course of my life, and especially work life, I have been really sharing a lot on personal projects. Like even before this long COVID project, for one entire year in a project called Dear Data with somebody that I didn't know in the UK. We got to know each other through sharing our personal data every week that we would collect and draw in a form of a postcard sheet of paper that was sent every week from New York to London and to London to New York, creating this set of like 52 portraits of ourselves only through the lens of data. There were always a legend that explained all the thing. And that project then, we started publishing on a website, became a book, got viral. People are doing this Dear Data thing all around. Now it's in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art, which is really nice. But that was like already, yeah, that's a nice outcome. But I think that when we had the idea for that project and we started to see that there was such a power in using this form of documentation to learn more about yourself, and even if from a creative perspective, really, we've seen in workshop that people, even when we were testing it at the beginning, can we draw with data? That people that previously were completely scared of the blank page, when they had those quantities and categories that they could use to create the symbols, and they all of a sudden felt like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I can do it. So in that sense, I just wanted to say that I've done it multiple times to put myself out there, even with very personal information, to test something or to see what was going on. But to me, it has always been, and this was true for the New York Times article, it's just really this feeling that I cannot not do it. Like, I have to do it. Like, I don't think that it was really ever more thought out than this like instinctual feeling of, I have this thing, I just need to do it. And the New York Times, I just felt like there is no single thing that I've seen out there in all my suffering that help people explaining, even to their own family that is in their house with them, what it really feels on a daily basis. And so I kind of thought, I have this data that I collected because I was collecting this data through my illness to try and find correlations about symptoms, what I was eating, what I was doing, the level of activity, the level of stress, what I was taking. And so, yeah, to a certain extent, that's really just what I think. And then if I think about it rationally and intellectually, yes, I also feel that those are all the projects and the instances where hopefully one, maybe it can help somebody feeling, in the case of the long COVID project, a little less lonely and understood, right? Or in the case of Dear Data, it might spark something creative for a community, for anybody. It might be inspiring. It might unlock other ways of thinking about data in the first place. And obviously that's very ambitious to say, but
you're exactly right though. Like there is an ambition to it. So like I absolutely love like hearing that, because like one, there's a compulsion. There's just like this instinct that like I need to do this just by way of kind of like thinking about myself, or it's like I need to draw this picture in order for me to just think clearly. But then there's like this kind of like extra step, which is like kind of like putting it out there for the benefit of others, and part of it's selfishly motivated, like as is for me it's like like I'm learning these things professionally and I'm blogging about it and I'm sharing it, and I'm hoping that means that that'll like help me like land the next project. So not purely altruistic, but it's like these things are not mutually exclusive, right? That you actually can have these like very like win-win things, and to sort of like put stuff out there, get sort of external validation, help some other people participate in a bigger conversation, which then sort of you bring back into your own personal. It's like it feels like a really healthy kind of loop to I guess.
Well, yes, it is. It's I also feel that like even if we purely talk about creative work, I have learned a tremendous amount in going out there and sharing. And even you and I met at a conference when we were both speaking, and to me that was probably the first conference that I spoke at in English. I'm from Italy, if you didn't pick up the accent in the 49 minutes that we've been recording. But I moved to the US just really when we met, but even though the conference that we met was in Sweden, right? That's where we met. Yeah. Anyway, but I feel I was terrified. I was terrified to go on a stage where I was like barely speaking English, but I learned, so I started to put myself out there, and I learned from the bad presentations that I've given. I've learned from the bad paced presentation what works. I've learned what clicks with an audience because of the comments that they made right after. And I've learned that there are parts that maybe they were very interesting for me, but ultimately maybe not so successful when I wanted to communicate stuff. And I think that constantly trying to put yourself out there, even in moments and things that feel uncomfortable, are very fundamental. And I also think that there's a lot of talk about failure and rejection right now, but those they're words, but like fundamentally, I think it's inevitable that if you want to improve or learn or grow or do something bigger with your creative practice and whatever things you're doing in your career, it's really inevitable that you'll have to face moments where what you thought that was good was not so great, and then you learn from it.
Yeah.
I also think that sometimes people say to me, "Oh, but you have courage to go there on stage." And it wasn't built overnight. Like I think all this confidence is having it done over time and thinking that in the end I didn't die, nothing happened. Sure, I could have had an evening where I wasn't thrilled about myself, but then you could do it again. And I think that then when you see yourself progressing, even in the way that you deliver a talk, if that's the terrifying thing, or even in how nervous you are before you get on stage the third or the fourth or the 10th time, and hopefully that reduces a little bit and you start to even feel the joy of being on stage. Because I think, for example, in that, for me, at some point, something clicked that it was not about, oh my gosh, I'm going there, I'm terrified, people are going to catch me that I'm not good enough, right? Like I shifted from that mentality to, wait a second, people are here for me and the other speakers to succeed. I should just really enjoy this moment. But it didn't happen overnight. Probably was year 3 of myself just putting myself out there and making mistakes. So yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Guys, yeah, it's like I'm sure you've gotten it for a long time of like, oh, I can't draw, or I can't do this, or oh, you're so whatever, or like, oh, but my stuff isn't that interesting. Like, and that stuff is always so heartbreaking to hear, I think. And that's like, I think a big, like one of like the big missions of this show is to kind of help demystify that, because it's like we're all human beings. We all, yeah, like nobody's just out there like, I've got it sorted out. If you don't, like it's a journey. It's about cultivating humility. It's about like sort of like using these things as opportunities to learn and grow. But I also think like that the big thing that I've seen is, oh, well, you already wrote this article, or I've been wanting to write this thing, and well, or somebody else said it already way better than I could. And I think like one of the biggest things, and kind of like bring it all back to like biology and your own like kind of like life journey, one person has had your life experience. Only one person is from Italy who spoke at a conference in Sweden on that day, who then, could have endured this thing and is now here, right? And everyone has their own version of that. And that's not to say that like everyone needs to be out there saying the most interesting things in the world, or like that the result of what you share is going to end up in the permanent collection of MoMA, which is awesome, by the way. But it does mean that you have something valuable to share, because only one person has walked in your shoes. And so even if you think, oh, well, there's no new thinking in there, I promise you there is, because there's only one person that is you.
It's so beautiful. It's true. And even if we think about the whole thing that you just said on the other end, which is the receiver, right? Like somebody that will see your article, read your article, see your project, like you never know what clicks with people, because even in my own experience, right? Even if we get back to long COVID, like there have been people telling me about brain retraining and all these things even way before. And the way that they talk to me about it, because of their own story and how they came to understand it, how they related it to me, didn't click with me until this woman, Molly, said the same exact thing in relaying a story to me, and from a point of view that for me at the time was compelling. And so, even if we purely talk about words and sharing it, so you really never know then what clicks. And even visually, right? I feel that sometimes when young designers ask me, but how do you build your own style? I think I always say, you already have it, and you have it in your eyes. Because for me, learning how to design from your unique style is just learning how to see from your eyes. When you look at a painting, a composition, whatever. What is that attracts you with your own set of values, experience, culture, preferences? Is it the overall composition? Is it the color palette? Is it the way that it's evoking something cultural in this way? And the more that you just learn to see and parse what you're seeing through your own lens, then it's just inevitable that you'll be able to put them in your design versus trying to think what is trending right now. Should I be using that font or something? Or then obviously if you work for a brand and if the mission is to appeal to Gen Z, blah blah blah, or whatever as or Gen the oldest whoever, like then sure there's a set of things that you should probably try to use because especially again when you're working for another company. But I think to build your own way of saying things and looking at things, it just means embracing what it means to be you. And I don't mean to sound corny, but I think
no. Like, yeah, that's the thing you're picking at is like, oh yeah, that sounds corny, but it's not. It's absolutely true. And it's like you're talking about like the nature of self-expression, and it's like sort of the same thing of just like, yeah, like, here's this thing and only you can write this article in the way that only I could write this article. Only you can present something in the way that you can. And it took me a while in my own sort of like visual art. I used to be like, ugh, I can't painting faces, especially. It's like, I'm going to look, you don't want that. But what I've learned to do is to let that go, that it's like, oh, that's not for painting, and what I do is not proper painting. It just means that I'm wired a certain way, and I've like learned to like kind of just make peace with the fact that it's like, oh, I'm gonna do more geometric kind of weird abstract stuff, not figure painting. And that's not to say that I wouldn't like to perhaps lean into that or grow, but like there is something. I love how you said it. It's like you already have it. It's in your eyes, and it's about just like kind of with like your natural gifts and to develop those, because that's the only thing you can do. And like the people that early in a journey, you try to model, steal from your heroes. You're like learning the mechanics of it, and like that's like kind of the time to play with that sort of stuff a little bit.
And it's beautiful when you do it. And I also feel like we're talking to a place where both you and I have been working in this field for a while. And maybe it's harder for younger designers for sure to embrace it. But I think like getting excited about exploring again what makes you and versus only trying to look up at other people. It's interesting. And I think another thing that I hear a lot from students or younger designers is asking me advices on what should they make their personal projects about, and like I think for me it's always like, well, what are you obsessed about? What is that you can't thinking about? What is that really keeps you up at night, that if you had time you'd only read about that, research that, do that? I think that's a good place to start, because again, instead of saying, okay, now I should really do something about whatever topic because that will resonate. I think that, there's the case to say that. I think we all should be good citizens and activists in the things that we care about. But ultimately, there's something also to say in how do I explore really what I'm already so passionate about, even if I think it's boring, because then sometimes I get the answer, oh, but I like to do X, Y, and Z, and that's boring. And I'm like, no way, that's not true. And your own angle too, and you never know who that will resonate with.
Right. And a lot of it's like that's a story that person's telling themselves, right? Like that they're saying, no, that's boring. And like when you say that, and just kind of like how we kind of like started the conversation, is like those narratives ultimately take root, right? That's what's carving slowly but surely with each pass of that, those neural canyons that say the things that are on my mind are boring. I am boring. And stuff like that, right? And it's
interrupt the process.
Yeah. And you have to redirect that in order to like that's I think like the impetus for the show is this like notion of that. Yeah, like what are you like? I love how you said it. It's like, what are you obsessed about? It's like, what is that thing that like there is this like tiny window of time before you actually go, let me look at my wall-to-wall calendar for the day. You
Yeah.
just like you have this like brief moment of clarity, and then very often like we have like a story that kind of comes in afterwards that sort of suppresses it or redirects it, or does
Yeah.
something to like, but like that thing is the truth. Like that thing is the thing that like your soul, your body, your mind is just like to do. And that's like when you find yourself unguarded, it's like those are really important things to pay
Yeah.
attention to. And it's like I really feel for like the, you're talking about like younger designers or students or other professionals. The terrain's tough right now. We see like the whatever the LinkedIn thing is, the job market's hard. There's like a lot of like contortions that I think that a lot
Yeah.
of people feel under pressure to do. And I think that like one of the lessons that I think that you're touching on really well here is that it's like those things that you are obsessed by, or these things that you feel are important, are ultimately, kind of almost ironically, the things that distinguish you in an
Yeah.
otherwise kind of homogenous whatever market or landscape or whatever. It's like, yeah, having the courage to sort of like get out there and actually like kind of put what you
Yeah.
actually care about out there is like that gets people's attention, right?
It does. And yeah, you put it really well, Brad. And it might not happen overnight, but I think that at some point it does happen, that it resonate with somebody that, might talk to you about an opportunity, a collaboration, something that, I don't know, might not even become your day job, but might
Yeah.
become something that really fulfills your creative passion. And so,
Follow those threads, and they do.
yeah.
They lead you to really cool places. The only other structured question on the show is what music are you excited about, or what do you want more people to know about?
Well, it's not so well known. It's what's called electro swing, electro jazz. And so that kind of like electronic beat music, but with a like underlying like swing and jazz melodies. And some artists that I know and like are part of Stellar, Nose with like that little triangle on the O and Z I, or Cormac with 2Ks. And I think that yeah, I just feel that every time that I hear a song out there or in a soundtrack that is electro swing and jazz, the person that I'm with is like, oh my gosh, this is fun, what it is. And I feel like it's really not so well known. And I've started to listen to this stuff in 2015 or so. So yeah,
Oh,
that's really,
amazing. Oh, that's cool. I'm excited to dig into that. That sounds like
yeah.
there's like weird combinations of stuff that it's like, oh wow, that works. And
I think you will like it.
I'm sure I will. I'll definitely be sure to like link up. I know that we kind of like talked about it throughout, but like your New York Times there, but like where else can people follow along with you and your work and all of that?
I am at Giorgia Lupi on Instagram, and Georgia it's spelled with an I, so GIORGIA LUPI. And then yeah, my website, my company's name is Pentagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I think that like there's a lot here, and like while not everyone has like been through long COVID, I think that everyone has been through their own flavor of hard. So I think that like a lot of what you're talking about in these journeys and kind of emerging on the other side with the attitude that you have, I think is like really helpful for so many people. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time to chat about it with me. So
This was so fun. Thank you so much.
awesome. Well, take good care, and yeah, more soon.
Bye.
Bye.